Welcome back to part 2 of our presentation, where we will explore in detail the 5 major conflicts that we identified between the alleged sermon addresses published in the New Codes by Florence Houteff and that which is published in the original Shepherd's Rod writings. The first subject we'll address is, when does Jacob's time of trouble take place? This is one topic of much confusion in certain Davidian circles. When does Jacob's time of trouble take place? Many insist that it is before Ezekiel 9, a time when Davidians are supposed to go out and oppose the, quote, Assyrian Confederacy, end of quote, and warn antitypical Nineveh, America, during the, quote, Jonah phase, end of quote, of the message. As we shall see, none of these conclusions are based on the original published writings of the Shepherd's Rod, but solely upon key references found within the New Codes. We will carefully analyze these assumptions one at a time, first beginning with a statement found in 11 Symbolic Code number 7, the source of the confusion about the timing of Jacob's time of trouble. Let us read this passage on page 3 of 11 Symbolic Code number 7. Brother Houteff made the remark concerning the possibility of trouble coming to the church after the sealing of the saints and before the slaughter of Ezekiel 9. And if so, what the results would be and why. Since Revelation 11 has been more recently been unfolded before us, we should be able to see that it is not just a possibility, but rather a fact, an approaching reality, that trouble is coming to the church before the slaughter of Ezekiel 9. None, therefore, need to be ignorant concerning what we must now be doing about it. The first question that comes to mind is, who received the revelation to make it a, quote, a fact and approaching reality? End of quote. Was that revelation given to Florence Houteff? One must believe so, because she's the one making that statement. The big problem with this particular code is the intervening time, i.e. this trouble before Ezekiel 9, the slaughter of Ezekiel 9. Now, before we discuss this intervening time in more detail, we would like first to draw our attention to the correct chronological order of events leading up to Ezekiel 9 and immediately thereafter, according to what is written in the original writings of the Shepherd's Rod, briefly summarized in part below on the next slide in Timely Greetings, Volume 2, Number 10, pages 28 to 30. So the rod here plainly clarifies this order of events. Will start with event number 4. That the destruction of the tares from among the first fruits of the living, Matthew 13, verses 30, 48, 49, and Ezekiel chapter 9, verses 6 and 7, results in the purification of the church. Next, number 5, that immediately thereafter the angels let loose the 4 winds, Revelation 7, verses 1 to 3, whereupon ensues the time of trouble, and Michael standing up to deliver from it all whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life, Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. 6, that the angels letting loose the 4 winds to blow over the 4 corners of the earth, Revelation 7, verse 1, does not anticipate a world war, but rather a worldwide decree enforced throughout Babylon by the image beast, and that then no one may buy or sell save he who worships the image, Revelation 13, verses 15 through 17. 7, that subsequently, meaning following after, the time of Jacob's trouble, Jeremiah 30, verse 7, for the 144,000, the sons of Jacob, logically develops on their way home, Genesis 32, verses 1 and 24, to the land of their fathers, Ezekiel 36, verse 28, and 37, verses 21 and 25. Once again, this is Volume 2, Timely Greetings, number 10, page 26. Please note carefully, this is important, that the time of Jacob's trouble, event number 7, is placed after the church is purified. Event number 4, not before it, but after. It's plain as day. Whatever is the trouble that the 144,000 will face before Ezekiel 9 certainly needs to be studied out more carefully. But at this point, it would be totally incorrect to identify it as, quote, Jacob's time of trouble. This trouble we'll pick up in another study, but it's known as the present trouble that foreshadows the time of trouble since there never was a nation. Now here's a strange paradox. Florence Houteff published in June of 1955 in this code, volume 10, number 8, page 4. One of the best summaries in chronological order of events are enumerated in Timely Greetings, volume 2, number 10, pages 28 to 31. Therein the major prophetic events are placed in their correct setting point by point, and it is certain that no one who applies the full treatment of ISAV, truth, of this article need be blinded as to what order each event is to transpire. This is a strange paradox, for she states in this very code that the order of events listed in Timely Greeting number 2, volume 2, number 10, are chronological and are listed point by point, and we need not be blinded as to the events. She also reiterated the same belief later in 11 Symbolic Code number 1, page 13, which reads, "For further studies concerning the sequence of events surrounding the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9, please read the fundamental beliefs, Timely Greetings, volume 2, number 10, pages 29 and 30. So clear, she's here endorsing the correct order of events published in the Rod, but then later appears to contradict them. So where do we get this possibility of an intervening time? Well, it's found in 11 Symbolic Code number 7, page 8. It reads, you notice here the angels are not told to hold the winds until Ezekiel 9 has been fulfilled, but until the servants of God are sealed. Therefore, if there is any intervening time between the close of the sealing and the slaughter of Ezekiel 9, there is a possibility that the winds could start blowing during that time. If the nation had everything ready, it would not be necessarily take long to bring the trouble that is represented by the four winds. We do know from this scripture that God will restrain the winds until the sealing is finished. For according to verse 3 of this chapter, a message was sent to the four angels instructing them to hold the winds until the sealing of the 144,000 is finished. It shows that the devil is doing all he can to loose the four winds as soon as possible, perhaps even in a day. Now, brethren, step back and look at this carefully and notice the confusion that is found in this paragraph. It is stated that if there's any intervening time between the close of the sealing and before the slaughter of Ezekiel 9, that the four winds could start blowing then. The four winds, as we all know, is the Sunday Blue Law, the image of the beast decree. Let us ponder this for a moment, brethren. The possibility of the Sunday Blue Law, according to this code, could be enacted before Ezekiel 9 and after the sealing? The word possibility, according to Florence Houteff, is no longer, quote, a possibility, but it's a fact and approaching reality, end of quote, as stated previously on page 3 of this same code. Now, explain to us how the mark of the beast system, the Sunday Blue Law, is going to be enacted before Ezekiel 9. Would it mean that the Laodiceans would be affected by the mark of the beast system as well as the 144,000? Come now, let us reason together, saith the Lord, and take only what is published. Notice here also, quoting just 2 paragraphs down from this very passage, this statement, and ask the question, how do we harmonize this? This is on page 8 and 9 of this 11 Symbolic Code number 7. If sinners were still among God's people when the winds start to blow, the church would fall. For while the sinners are among God's people, the church cannot stand against their enemies. In other words, were trouble to be brought against the church before the abominations are eliminated, before the unrighteous are taken out of our midst, there's a possibility that the whole church would fall and that God would have to intervene himself to rescue her. If God's righteous people are separate, it would be different. The 9th chapter of Ezekiel, however, tells us that the angels are commissioned to go through the midst of the city and mark those who sigh and cry for all the abominations that are done in the midst thereof, showing that the wicked and the righteous are not at the time separate, but instead they are commingled. Could anybody please harmonize the above two quotations from the purported sermons delivered by the prophet himself, first on September 21st, 1936, and then later given on February 27th, 1943? For these seem to contradict each other. Also, could someone please harmonize the first quotation on page 3 of this code, volume 11, number 7, suggesting that the four winds might blow before the slaughter, with these following two authentic statements on the next slide, published by the prophet while he was still living in January 1936 and October of 1936, respectively, given in these authentic reference or statements from the old codes. The first one in Symbolic Code, volume 2, number 1, pages 9 and 10. It reads, "The only thing that would compel him to pass blue Sunday laws and go to make war with the remnant of her seed, with those who are left," Revelation 12:17, "is the purity of the church when God, by the slaughter weapons of Ezekiel 9, takes away the tares which received not the mark. And even then, Satan will not enact blue Sunday laws until after he has exhausted every other weapon against the church. Therefore, as long as the church remains in her present Laodicean condition, there will be no blue laws or war against her, but a bluff only to make her members believe that they are free from his snares and that he is still trying to cause them to fall." And the next passage, published in volume 2 of Symbolic Code, number 9, page 6. "If the time of trouble or the anger of the nations, which is caused by the union of church and state, the image of the beast, takes place in the time of the judgment of the living, as explained in former publications, the enforcement of the blue Sunday law must take place after the purification of the church." So we can see or address this question: do we see any timing or intervening time between the sealing and the slaughter? Let's look at these references from the rod. "After the sighing and crying ones were marked, which is not to be understood as being consummated in its entirety worldwide before the slaying follows anywhere, the slaughter completed and the matter reported, the Lord spoke unto the man clothed with linen, and said, Go ye in between the wheels, even under the cherub, and fill thy hand with coals of fire from between the cherubims, and scatter them over the city." Ezekiel 10, verse 2. So we see here that the marking and the slaying, the marking will not be completed worldwide before the slaying starts. In other words, the marking and the slaying go together hand in hand, like a needle through the shuttle. And this is found in track number 1, pages 38 and 39. Consider this statement in volume 2 of Shepherd's Rod, page 165. "When this number is sealed, probation will close for the church, and the judgment for those who are in the world will commence, as the tares perish at the time when probation is closing for the church." And also this passage from Volume 1, Symbolic Code number 13, page 9, paragraph 11. "The 144,000 being sealed before the worship of the image beast is urged upon us, it follows that the seal of God is placed on the second fruits, while Sunday observance and the worship of the image of the beast is being enforced." We can see no intervening time between the sealing and the slaughter in these three statements, so let us not stray outside the confines of the golden bowl by heeding to an uninspired voice, but rather follow only what God's true prophet has spoken, no more, no less. So summarizing this portion on the timing of Jacob's trouble, the idea that there's a gap of time between the sealing of the 144,000 and the slaughter of Ezekiel 9, at which time Jacob's time of trouble takes place, is not sustained from the original published writings of the Rod, but it appears to be wholly based upon the imagination of Florence Houteff and those sympathizers supporting her. The Rod definitely places Jacob's time of trouble after Ezekiel 9, as found in Timely Greetings, Volume 2, number 10, pages 29 and 30, and also in the tract Fundamental Beliefs, pages 12 and 13. As the 144,000 are on their way home to the kingdom, the time when the four winds of Revelation 7 let loose and Michael stands up to deliver his people. Daniel 12, verse 1. Now let's get into the next source of conflict and ask the question, is there a Jonah phase of the message? Where are we told in the published writings of Brother Houteff that our message, or that our work, is in two stages? The quote Elijah and the Jonah phases? Does this Jonah phase tell us to oppose the upcoming, quote, Assyrian Confederacy? Well, let's read where this idea comes from. It's found in 11 Symbolic Code number 8, pages 10 and 11. The message in tract 14 shows to what age God's people have come. It shows that the church is now grown up in truth and can become husbandmen, rulers, etc., and that therefore the time has come that the kingdom of Christ is to be set up. And the tract contains the message to Nineveh. These two things are all that tract 14 shows. Our message for the present time is in two sections, two divisions. 1, the message to the church, and 2, the message to Nineveh. In other words, we have the message of Elijah and also the message of Jonah. After Jonah came on shore following his experience in the sea, his next step was to proclaim a message to Nineveh, evidently to save it, or there would not have been no need for Jonah to be sent. At the end of the given 40 days, Nineveh stood. At this, Jonah should have taken the position of rejoicing that he was a savior of Nineveh, but instead Jonah was sick and wished he was dead. So where do we get this idea that there's a message to Assyria? Well, this comes from the same code of volume 11, number 8, pages 11, 12. This should be a great object lesson to us. In carrying our message of Elijah, we should not be anxious for the execution of Ezekiel 9 in the church, but rather we should be anxious for the souls of the people. Likewise, in bearing our message of Jonah, we should not be anxious for Assyria's fall, but rather for her repentance and salvation. This is one justification that several Davidian associations claim will happen at some point in the near future when we, that is Davidians, will have to oppose the Confederacy and bring this, quote, Jonah message, end of quote, to anatypical Nineveh, America, the head of anatypical Assyria, the English-speaking Protestant nations. After a careful reading of tract number 14, there's no clear distinction presented therein that there is to be an Elijah phase of the message to be given to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and then another separate, quote, Jonah phase, end of quote, of the message that will be given, supposedly, to anatypical Nineveh, America. This cannot be found elsewhere in the published writings of the Rod. Thus, it appears that the idea that, quote, our message for the present is in two sections, two divisions, end of quote, comes not from the original published writings of the Rod, but solely from the uninspired authority of an unconfirmed sermon delivered by Brother Houteff on June 10, 1944, 12 full years prior to its publication in the June 1956 Symbolic Code. How many of us today can honestly say that we can remember the details of an unwritten sermon given 12 months ago, much less one given 12 years prior? This would be an absurd proposition to base the authority of our message upon such flimsy evidence without written confirmed proof, that is, sermon notes, manuscript drafts, letters, etc., that such a sermon was actually given and what were its principal contents. This documentation should be readily available for inspection and verification, just as are all of Ellen White's letters, manuscripts, and important documents found at the White estate. If these sermon addresses were so important for us to know, would not God reveal them to all people just like he does in his holy word? Can we trust the reliability of one Florence Houteff's word alone for the authenticity of said sermon notes when she has proven to be the primary architect of apostasy and the author of many heresies against the rod that would later lead to the infamous knockout blow and disgraceful dismantling of the association physically, spiritually, and morally? Come now, brethren, let us reason together as we are commanded by the Lord, and let us separate from such questionable sources of material which contain many added private opinions to the original message of the shepherd's rod, especially when so much is at stake, even our own soul salvation. On the other hand, should any of these, quote, sermon notes alleged by Florence Houteff alone, or other original documents appear to vindicate or verify that these so-called sermon addresses were given in the new codes, then please let us know. We at the upa7.org website will be happy to publish them for everyone to see and investigate for themselves. Well, here's some interesting facts and trends if we do some research from the Shepherd's Rod CD database that one can search through the Folio software and the Ellen White CD-ROM. If we search the term, quote, Jonah message, end of quote, on the Shepherd's Rod Folio base, you will get 8 responses. It is found in only one place in the original Rod message. That's Volume 1 of TG, number 50, page 27. Whereas it is found 7 other places exclusively in the new code, Volume 11, Symbolic Code number 8. 2. The idea that the message comes in 2 sections is found nowhere in the Rod except for 11 Symbolic Code number 8, published by Florence Houteff. This can be confirmed by searching the Shepherd's Rod Folio base with the terms, quote, message, 2 sections, end of quote, and, quote, message, 2 divisions, end of quote. Where is Jonah's experience mentioned as a type in the original published writings of Brother Houteff? If we search the term, quote, Jonah type, end of quote, we get 6 responses. 2, found in Volume 1 of Shepherd's Rod, pages 16 and 17, say that Jonah was a type of Christ. You should look this up and check it out. The other 4, found in 11 Symbolic Code number 8, pages 7 through 9, again published by Florence Houteff, come up with this idea that Jonah's experience is a type. We have to ask the question, about the possibility of a type. If we read in this new code reference, so much for the sign of Jonah to the Jews in Christ's time. Let us now consider for the remainder of the time the possibility that the rest of Jonah's experience is a type also. If so, what do Jonah, Nineveh, the sea, the fishes expelling Jonah after he had partly learned his lesson typify? Jonah's whole experience would be a type of God's people with a message that they were to proclaim to the world. It could be a type of the duties God gave to his people, and they, like Jonah, wanted to put it aside, let George do it, so to speak. This is found in 11 Symbolic Code number 8, page 7. So now it's no longer a possibility, but a definite. On page 9 of the same code, it reads, "The message of Jonah was to bear to Nineveh is a type of our message arising in the New World, America." So here it is, the identification of a new type. We must seriously, brethren, ask the question, who has the authority to identify a type and then give its explanation? Only a true prophet of God can do this. If these sermons were in fact fabrications made at the hand of Florence Houteff and approved by our apostate council, then this would stand as an indictment against her as a false prophet by trying to explain a new type in its antitypical application. Unless we can positively confirm that Brother Houteff actually gave the sermon that serves as the basis for this conclusion, we would indeed be placing our trust in an assumption that is sitting upon a foundation of sand. To be fair, we should make plain that if the authentic sermon notes or manuscript can be produced for public scrutiny to verify that this sermon was actually delivered and accurately reproduced as claimed in 11 Symbolic Code number 8, then the concerns brought up in this presentation would no longer be valid and the case would be closed. Until such a time, the onus to prove the case lies solely in the hands of those advocates who believe the authenticity of Florence Houteff's New Code publications. So which will it be, brethren? The true prophet of God, Victor T. Houteff, or the counterfeit, Florence Houteff, the wife? Serious things to ponder. And let us not forget this beautiful illustration of the golden bowl, the truth that we get from the two pipes, God's two latter-day messengers, the human instrumentalities, Ellen G. White and Victor Houteff. They alone who bring this truth, the golden oil, into the golden bowl, the written publications of the spirit of prophecy. Them and them alone, the tubes, the ministers, are to get the oil and bring it to the church, to be a light on the hill. Let us not forget this beautiful, powerful, and simple illustration. Only two pipes, brethren, not 3, not 4, or not somebody trying to remove one pipe and put themselves in. Let us think about these things and only teach what is published in the Rod. We'll address our next point of conflict by asking the question, which trumpet are we living in? Well, the answer is plainly seen in this chart, this beautiful, inspired piece of prophetic artwork that was originally published in large size in 1944 by Brother Houteff. And if we look carefully, the timing of when the sixth trumpet began is right on this chart. And we're going to zoom in and see right here. Here's the sixth trumpet, Revelation chapter 9, verse 14. There's the trumpet standing there, the angel with the trumpet. And notice, when did it begin to sound? Well, before the 1260-year period, before 538 to 1798. The four angels are bound within the river Euphrates in that 1260-year period. So clearly, the charts don't lie. The answer is right here. That sixth trumpet began to sound sometime before the 1260-year period. Well, let's confirm this in the written publication, The Shepherd's Rod. We'll read this passage from 5-track, page 78. It reads, "In coming from the golden altar, the command, 'Loose the four angels,' shows that the sixth trumpet sounded sometime before the veil to the most holy apartment of the heavenly sanctuary was lifted. Otherwise, the voice would have come from the throne, the most holy place. For detailed treatment of the lifting of the veil, see track number 3, The Harvest. But, as has been shown, we are still in the period of the fifth trumpet, a fact which evokes the question, how, then, could the sixth trumpet have sounded before the events of the fifth had expired? It will be observed that though each of the trumpets begin at a definite time, yet one overlaps the other, and all 7 extend to the second coming of Christ. Once again, that's 5-track, page 78. So when was the veil of the most holy apartment lifted? Well, let's look at this reference in 5-track, page 31, 3rd edition, 1953 reprint. It reads, the altars being in the holy apartment of the sanctuary at the sounding of the sixth trumpet proves that the trumpet sounded before the most holy apartment was open for use. For had it been in use, the voice would have necessarily come from therein, where the throne is. Hence, the sounding of this trumpet had to take place before the door of the most holy was open and the throne occupied. So, as Seventh-day Adventists, we know that Christ entered from the holy place into the most holy to begin his high priest ministry in the antitypical Day of Atonement in the heavenly sanctuary on October 22, 1844. No question about it that the sixth trumpet had to sound before October 22, 1844. Now, let us compare this authentic artwork from the rod and publications from the rod with that which is published in the new codes. We're going to read this passage from 12 Symbolic Code number 2, page 8. It reads, the fifth trumpet, therefore, sounded when Christ came nearly 2,000 years ago. We find ourselves, therefore, living in the periods of the sounding of the fifth trumpet, the Christian period, before the sounding of the sixth trumpet. That's interesting. Look at this passage. The same code, 12 Symbolic Code number 2, page 4, paragraph 1. Now we wish to ascertain what period we are living in. At the sounding of the sixth trumpet, the 4 angels are to be let loose, and they are then to kill a third part of men, and their army, moreover, is to number 200 million horsemen, and that many horses. Since no such thing has ever happened, it therefore speaks for itself that the sixth trumpet is yet future. It has not commenced to sound. This is interesting. Look at this passage, the same code, page 4, paragraph 2. In view of the fact that we are not living in the sixth trumpet, let us ascertain whether we may be in the sounding of the fifth trumpet, or whether it, too, is yet future. Or this passage, same code, page 8. But now in this period before the sixth angel sounds his trumpet, some men are to seek death, and they will not find it, and would desire to die, and death would flee from them. They just could not die, for they would be immune to death. Or this passage in 12 Symbolic Code number 2, page 12. And at what time will they be made invulnerable to death? Our study today makes plain that it is during the fifth trumpet and before the sounding of the sixth trumpet. If God is going to do this during the period of the fifth trumpet, then the sealing of the 144,000 must take place in the period of the fifth trumpet and not the sixth. It is then before the sixth angel sounds that some will have the experience of seeking death and shall not find it. Now the evidence is plain enough, as we see here, to show that the teaching in this code is in direct contradiction with the authoritative statements given in track number 5, which we just read. We all know that if the, quote, sixth trumpet sounded sometime before the veil of the most holy apartment of the heavenly sanctuary was lifted, end of quote, and as any serious Seventh-day Adventist knows that the veil of the most holy of the heavenly sanctuary lifted in October 22, 1844, then logic demands that the sixth trumpet must have sounded before 1844. There's no maneuvering around this plain teaching, except one be given over to a strong delusion by choosing to believe a lie. This is further confirmed in the following illustration regarding under which trumpet the 144,000 are sealed. The new codes say it must take place under the fifth trumpet. But let's see what the rod says. How can someone please harmonize the rod with a supposed sermon that was given in July 1946 and published in the New Codes? Here's what the rod says about the sealing time of the 144,000. This is Volume 1, Shepherd's Rod, page 28. We read in Revelation 8 and 9 of the seven angels with the seven trumpets. These seven trumpets indicate the principal political and warlike events which were to transpire during the time of the gospel church. The sealing of the 144,000 belongs to the time of the sixth trumpet. Or this passage, in comparison with what the new codes say. The sealing of the 144,000 must take place in the period of the fifth trumpet, and not the sixth. It is then before the sixth angel sounds that some will have the experience of seeking death and not finding it. So, brethren, which one is it? The rod or the new codes? Or read this passage from 5-track, page 107, 3rd edition, 1953 reprint. During the period of the sixth trumpet, there's no literal temple. Thus, the measuring, Revelation 11:1, can refer only to a spiritual temple made up of lively stones, saints. In view of this fact, we are compelled to conclude, unless otherwise shown, that the temple, the altar, and the worshippers must each be figurative of a class of believers, and all three must be numbered after the disappointment in 1844 and during the time of the Seventh-day Adventist movement. So we see here that in the period of the sixth trumpet, all three groups are going to be numbered. That includes the 144,000. However, contrast this with what is published in the New Code, 12 Symbolic Code number 2, page 15. It says, we learned that in the fifth trumpet, there are only 144,000 sealed ones, but in the sixth trumpet, there are to be 200 million. My, oh my, what confusion. Which one are we going to follow? The voice of God through the rod or the voice through the new codes? Brethren, the chart cannot lie. The truth tells, a picture tells 1,000 words. The sixth trumpet, plainly seen here, sounds before the 1260-year period, before the veil of the Most Holy was lifted, October 22, 1844. We can't change the inspiration. We have to take what is published and follow that alone. Now, let's get into our next point, our fourth point. Where did Jesus spend 3 days and 3 nights? Well, this chart, this inspired chart, 1944 original, sit in the heart of the earth. And if we look closely, the answer is right here in pictorial mode. If we look carefully over on the right-hand side, it says, in the tomb, as we follow the graphic around. Let's see what the rod in writing says. Where did Jesus spend 3 days and 3 nights? Volume 2, Shepherd's Rod, page 25 reads, for as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Matthew 12, verse 40. The idea that the heart of the earth means the grave is man's supposition without Bible foundation. If the Savior had in mind his experience in the grave, he would have said so. If his grave was in the center of the earth, about 4,000 miles beneath its surface, the heart of the earth, then one may suppose he meant the heart of the earth. Jesus used the expression to indicate that he was to be 3 days and 3 nights in the hands of sinners and in the grave. Why are sinners called the heart of the earth? Because man was made of it according to Genesis chapter 3, verse 19. For dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. So in the hands of sinners, and in the grave. According to this SRod reference, in tract number 10, page 15, it reads that he remained in the tomb 2 nights and rose on Sunday, that the 3 days and 3 nights is the time from his first legal trial to the time of his resurrection, that the heart of the earth has been erroneously interpreted to mean the grave, when instead it is, as Jonah's experience shows, symbolical of Christ's imprisonment in the hands of sinners and in the tomb. So these statements are pretty clear. And finally, this passage from Volume 1, Symbolic Code, number 6, page 7, it reads, "For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth, that is, in the hands of sinful clay." Perfect harmony with these 3 passages. Now let us contrast what we find in the new codes. This passage, found in 11 Symbolic Code number 8, pages 5 through 7, it reads, "Without the heart nothing lives. It is the heart that keeps one alive, and therefore the heart of the earth must be that which keeps the earth alive. Therefore the heart of the earth is God's truth, his people, and his spirit. Without all these 3 components, I tell you, the world would not now be in existence. The truth alone is dormant. But when the truth, the Bible, is combined with people and the Spirit of God, then there is life in the earth. Yes, to repeat, Bible truth alone is dormant. With people it is active. And when these have also God's Spirit, something then can be accomplished. It is the combination of these 3 that makes up God's church, the heart of the earth." In our study of the 3 days and 3 nights, what light did we receive to help us? That the heart of the earth was not the tomb, but rather Jesus was in reality in the power or in the hands of the church for 3 days and 3 nights, even though part of that time he was dead and in the tomb. My, oh my, a radical reinterpretation after Brother Houteff died. And look at this passage from 11 Symbolic Code number 8, pages 5 to 7. Same code. Had Jesus meant that he would be in the tomb for 3 days and 3 nights, he would have not said the heart of the earth. It therefore shows that, contrary to appearances, Jesus was actually resting in the power of God those 3 days and 3 nights, and therefore he was in a good, safe place. When Jonah was cast in the sea and swallowed up by the fish God had prepared for him, it appeared to Jonah to be his end. Likewise, in the case of Jesus, those last 3 days and 3 nights before he was resurrected gave the outward appearance of defeat for his righteous ministry. Nevertheless, Jonah's experience brought salvation to Nineveh, and Christ's experience brought salvation to the world. My, oh my, isn't this strange? A completely different interpretation. So which one are we going to follow, brethren? The rod that speaks, or the new codes? Finally, our last point of conflict concerns the Confederacy. What is our duty in regard to the upcoming Confederacy? So we know that the Bible does talk in Isaiah chapter 8 about a confederacy, that there will come a time when the powers of church and state will be united. And as these symbols, modern graphics show, that there is an increasing effort to reunite church and state. And we know this is foretold in prophecy. Now, let's compare what the new codes say about this. This is a very popular passage that's repeated or commented by Davidians, saying God's people are not only commanded not to participate in the Confederacy, but they're to oppose it to all them to whom this people shall say a confederacy. So we get this idea, this concept that God's people are going to go out and oppose this confederacy that's spelled out in Isaiah chapter 8. This is where it comes from. Now, let us compare this statement on Isaiah chapter 8, verses 11-12 with the one found in the authentic publications or writings of Brother Houteff. What does the rod say? Well, here's the verse, Isaiah chapter 8, verses 11-12. For the Lord spake thus to me with a strong hand, and instructed me that I should not walk in the way of this people, saying, Say ye not a confederacy. To all them to whom this people shall say a confederacy. Neither fear ye their fear, nor be afraid. Now, Brother Houteff comments, the fear which the people fear is not to be our fear, neither are their plans to be our plans. Our duty is, regarding this confederacy, Isaiah chapter 8, verse 13, sanctify the Lord of hosts himself, and let him be your fear, and let him be your dread. To sanctify the Lord is to be all for him, and to have no one else in his stead, to put your entire trust in him, not making flesh your arm, for he alone is able to see you through. And though you should be the only one in all the world to take such a stand, he will not fail you. If such be your case, then you will become heaven's greatest hero. Timely Greetings, Volume 2, number 41, pages 18 through 20. No hint is given in this passage of inspiration that we should, quote, oppose the Confederacy, end of quote, as suggested by the reference in 13 Symbolic Code, numbers 3 and 4, page 8. But rather, our duty is to, quote, sanctify the Lord of hosts himself. We must ask, where in the Scriptures or elsewhere in the original published writings of the Shepherd's Rod do we find a clear mandate to oppose the Confederacy? In Isaiah 8. Well, let's look closely, very closely, at this verse in Isaiah chapter 8. Clause A reads, For the Lord spake thus to me with a strong hand, and instructed me that I should not walk in the way of this people. So God is speaking through his prophet Isaiah with instruction for us that we should, quote, not walk in the way of this people who are urging a confederacy. The rod identifies this people as the nations and churches that are affiliating together for mutual protection. And this is found in 14 track page 44 and Timely Greetings, Volume 2, number 41, page 19. You can look these up and confirm it. So God is saying to the faithful, quote, say ye not a confederacy, end of quote, to all them who are being urged to join the confederacy. Verse 13. The all them who are being lured into the confederacy by this people, that is the nations and churches around them, would logically be our fellow brethren in the church. Does this include both Seventh-day Adventists and Davidian Seventh-day Adventists? If it can be shown that both are forming a confederacy in a trend that all the other churches of the world are following, the answer would be yes. And how may it be that the corporate Seventh-day Adventist mother church and, strangely, all the organized Davidian groups are forming an alliance with the world that God is telling us not to have a part of? Could it already be the case, as each organization has in fact incorporated with the state for the privilege of government tax benefits through the IRS 501c3 exemption clause? If our duty in regard to the upcoming confederacy is to sanctify the Lord of hosts, perhaps we should more closely examine a few inspired passages to help us clarify this point. In regard to state incorporation and the IRS 501c3, which is a law in the United States, this is part of another study. It's posted on the blog knockoutblow.wordpress.com. to warn of a fearful trap this is, the enemy's effort to silence the rod message. So I encourage you to go there. But our duty in regard to this confederacy in Isaiah 8 is to sanctify the Lord of the hosts. So let us see what the rod says about this. What does it mean to sanctify the Lord of the hosts? Well, in commenting on Isaiah chapter 66, verse 17, where the unfaithful in the church are sanctifying themselves behind one tree, the rod tells us, this passage in volume 1 of Shepherd's Rod, page 170, 171. Behind one tree, margin reads, one after another. The reading here justifies the translation, following the leader, the one tree. That is, people are inclined to follow a man in high position instead of searching in the Word for themselves and demand a "Thus saith the Lord." So there are people, unfortunately, that will sanctify themselves after the leaders and not after God. But what does it mean to sanctify the Lord and not man? This passage in Volume 1 of Shepherd's Rod, page 183, clarifies, quoting the first part of 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15, quote, "But sanctify the Lord God in your hearts," end of quote. The meaning is that God alone should dwell in the heart and nothing else should interfere. It is possible for one to obey the commandments in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15, as previously quoted, but without a sanctification of his heart to the Lord God. If he would spend a lifetime in studying, it would be in vain as far as spiritual things are concerned, of which we speak. On the other hand, if one would obey these two commands, 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15, and 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15, then he must be able to fulfill the last part of the verse, quote, "and be ready always to give an answer to every man that asketh you a reason of the hope that is in you with meekness and fear," end of quote. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. The kind of answer we give to every man will prove whether we keep God's commandments or not. This is what it means to sanctify the Lord of hosts. Is not only to study ourselves, to show ourselves approved unto God, but also to be able to give an answer to any man that asks a reason of the hope that's within us. We need them both. Furthermore, we're warned to cease ye from man. This passage in tract number 1, page 44, makes this clear. As never before, we should pray not only that the laborers may be sent forth into the great harvest field, but that we may have a clear conception of truth, so that when the messengers of truth shall come, we may accept the message and respect the messengers. Testimonies, volume 6, page 420. Let us therefore sanctify the Lord of hosts himself, and cease from men. As you will find yourself under severe trial if you obey your inner convictions and take hold of the truth, you must therefore let the Lord alone be your guide, and inspiration your only teacher. Do not value your salvation so little as to trust to the wisdom of another. Be wise, obey the word of the Lord, investigate for yourself, and do not delay, for you know not the narrow margin of time between you and heaven. Trust ye not in a friend, put ye not confidence in a guide. Keep the doors of thy mouth from her that lieth in thy bosom. Micah chapter 7, verse 5. Brethren, we need to take these counsels to heart, especially in regard to this controversy over the new codes. We can't take any man's word for it, the ministers or our friends, even in Davidia. We can't put trust in a friend. We have to investigate for ourselves. We don't realize how close the margin it is between truth and error. And we need to have the truth today. We need to strip it from all the confusion that is found in these new codes. Here's some interesting facts about this opposing this confederacy. If we go to the Shepherd's Rod database and search the term APPOS with the wildcard key. So we'll pick up words like oppose, opposing, opposition, etc. in connection with Confederacy. It does not appear in the original writings of the Shepherd's Rod. Nothing about opposing a confederacy. If we search the term, quote, Assyrian Confederacy, this does not appear anywhere in the writings of the Shepherd's Rod. Yes, brethren, no such thing as Assyrian Confederacy. However, if we search the term just Confederacy, it appears 15 unique paragraphs in the original published writings of the Rod, and none of these mentions anything about opposing an upcoming Confederacy. Look them up for yourself. Here they are, 2 Shepherd's Rod, Volume 2, page 61, page 180, track number 14, page 20, pages 32 to 33, and page 36, and page 44. 2 timely greetings, number 41, pages 16 through 18, page 20, and 2 Symbolic Code, Volume 2, number 2, page 5, Answer Book number 2, page 93, and Military Stand, page 5. Please go look these up. Nothing about opposing a confederacy. This is wholly the imagination of the supposed sermons that are published in the new codes. Despite this information that has been agitated in Davidia at least since 2000, we mentioned a little pink tract published by a man named Jonah before sometime around 2000. Other brethren have been questioning this. Lennox Sam and Michael Graham submitted a formal document to the Waco BRC in 2001, and it's been agitated in those circles. We were aroused to it in 2007. It's been agitated through Mountaindale. Salem was aware of it. When we studied there in 2001, they made reference to people that didn't believe the new codes as if they were some type of heretics. So this is not a secret. In recent years, people throughout Davidia are awakening to the problem with these codes, and it's being discussed through email, telephone, conference calls, Facebook. It's being agitated everywhere. So this is not an issue we can take lightly or sweep aside or sweep under the carpet. Our soul's salvation depends on standing on the solid rock and the platform of truth as published in the Rod. So brethren, let us follow the counsel and get our doctrine, brother, sister, from the golden bowl. And cease ye from man whose breath is in his nostrils. So despite this, the codes have been republished over the years since Brother Houteff's death. This is what reprints from Salem from 1970 to 74. Mountaindale has reprinted a similar layout since 1988. And the most infamous source is the Blue Book, as a lot of people know it, the Symbolic Codes that have been published since 1992 by Salem. So, yes, the new codes are still out there. But brethren, let us beware. So finally, our conclusion in regard to this presentation. With the 5 illustrations presented, strong evidence is provided to show that the claimed sermon addresses, as given by Brother Houteff and published posthumously in the new codes, are not authentic, but rather represent cleverly designed counterfeits meant to confuse and divide God's servants at this critical hour. Therefore, we strongly believe that all true, sincere, and wise-minded Davidians will turn away from these highly suspect materials and stay firmly within the hedge of inspiration until the authenticity of these sermon addresses can be proven otherwise, and the 5 major contradictions presented herein can be harmonized with the whole tenor of the Shepherd's Rod. Consequently, in following the divine mandate to teach only that which is published, UPA7.org and its role as facilitators in the republication of the original Shepherd's Rod message can have no part in the reproduction of said codes. For more information, if you have any further questions, comments, or would like to request an outline of this presentation as a PDF document, obtain a copy of the presentation as a QuickTime movie for sharing purposes, or to submit your own research for possible publication. We're going to have a part 3, questions and answers. Also, we have on the Knockout Blow blog site, opportunity for people to raise their questions, and we will meet them and face them fairly and honestly. And let it be like an open book. The light of day will make the truth known. You can contact us anytime. Our email, hosea21@gmail.com. Telephone, 860-798-3672. Or you can visit our website, www.knockoutblow.wordpress.com. There's an article already published about the new codes, and there's a venue or a forum for you to comment and share your feedback. We thank you for your time, brethren, and let us search for truth as for hidden treasure, and cease ye from man, whose breath is in his nostrils. God bless.